in life, timing is everything, as I said. And this week, the airline Virgin Australia got its timing absolutely right as it successfully refloated onto the Australian Stock Exchange. But look, that float coincided with the missile attack on a US airbase on the outskirts of Doha, the home of Virgin's 23% shareholder, Qatar Airways. By coincidence, I was in Doha, courtesy of Qatar Airways, to help understand the strategy behind Australia's rejuvenated second airline. But as I say, our timing, well, that wasn't so good. The Al Udeid Air Base on the outskirts of Doha is the biggest US base in the Middle East. The attack, for most, including the 10,000 of us who were suddenly stranded at the Doha airport, was a surprise. The reports started to filter out to us here at the Doha airport about these missile attacks on the Al Udeid Air Base, which is only 25 kilometres away from us. 6 missiles were aimed at the airbase by Iran in retaliation for attacks by America on its 3 nuclear facilities. The missiles were flagged ahead by Iran, then intercepted by Qatar's own Patriot missile defence system. But the fact that any attack took place on a country often described as the Switzerland of the Middle East that has maintained relations with Iran was lost on no one.
That will definitely have its scar on the relationship, what happened today, but I hope that by the time that everyone learns the lesson that this kind of neighbourhood relationship should not be violated and should not be undermined.
That attack, though, was a catalyst for the ceasefire between Israel and Iran.
Our friends in the United States have asked Qatar to contact the Iranian side to see how ready they are for this ceasefire, and we made the needed calls which led to the announcement that was made by the US president.
Even though it needed some urging by the US president.
We basically have 2 countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.
The great fear after the US attacks was that war in the Middle East would re-erupt and that Iran would seek to block the Persian Gulf and the Straits of Hormuz, disrupting global shipments of oil and natural gas.
We can say that the Strait of Hormuz, along with the Strait of Malacca, is the most important choke point in the world, probably for the world economy, not just for the energy world.
But for Iran, a full-scale war would also have been devastating for an already weakened regime.
Neither
Israel nor the US said they wanted to change the regime. In general, the Iranian people would not accept that. The Iranian regime will fall through a people's revolution, and that day is close.
The reason Business Weekend was in Doha was to look behind the scenes at Qatar Airways, which recently acquired 25% of Virgin Australia. We asked the airline to take us there. By coincidence, last week, Qatar was judged the best airline in the world for the 9th time. So you might think our timing was perfect. And that's how we ended up in the Qatari desert, not far from the Saudi Arabian border. From the deserts of the Middle East, where the temperature is regularly in the mid-40s, as it is right now, there was seemingly no life. But from this came the enormous wealth generated by oil and gas, and that created some of the strongest economies in the world per capita. But now there's a race against time to turn that wealth into something more sustainable, and airlines, like Qatar, are at the very heart of that. But because of the emerging political situation in the Middle East, when we got to Qatar, all the planned interviews were, for the time being, shut down. Again, it's about timing. Back in Australia, though, the timing of the Virgin float, in hindsight, was just about perfect. Well, almost.
Yeah, that's right. So obviously it's been an interesting 24 hours or even Yeah, try that again. We're very now focused on serving the domestic Australia market and serving the customers we can win. serving the small business, serving the value corporate, serving the premium leisure segment, those people who really value the product that we put out there. And
the new Virgin, if we can call it that, doesn't have an international airline. For now, it relies on its linkage to Qatar, whose now 23% share was approved by the Treasurer earlier this year. And that stake is now worth around $590 million. But the Virgin CEO this week didn't rule out a return to international flying, which coincidentally sank its predecessor.
Now that we've launched the flying in partnership with Qatar, we'll have a real window into what the performance of long-haul flying is today. And we'll be able to use that to put together our own numbers and see whether we can justify the capital of investing in going into the long haul.
But before Virgin ever thinks about making its own international flights, it should pause and think about the chaos at Doha's airport this week, when the airspace was closed, and the previous shock events that have crippled international airlines, like SARS, bird flu, 9/11, the global financial crisis, Ebola, and the very thing that killed off the previous version of Virgin, COVID-19. For Qatar, the linkage with Virgin gives it political clout to lift the number of flights it makes into Australia. In 2023, Transport Minister Catherine King was under pressure after taking apparent unilateral action to deny Qatar 21 extra weekly flights, at least partly based on strip searches of 5 Australian women at the Doha airport in 2020. To this day, the Prime Minister continues to have confidence in his minister. But now, after the Virgin deal, Qatar will wet lease aircraft to Virgin and potentially use up to 28 flight slots from Australia to Doha that are currently unused. The first of these Virgin flights took off 2 weeks ago using Qatar crew, aircraft and catering, but branded as Virgin flights. The whole service that for 9 years has seen Qatar named by Skytrax as the best airline in the world. And key to that is its catering, with 4,000 people working 24/7 to produce staggering amounts of food.
A great reputation is built on the consistency of quality, and that's the reason why Qatar is so paranoid about its reputation in this kitchen. One stray hair and its reputation is affected. That's why everybody's so covered up. This kitchen knocks out around 200,000 meals a day. That's about 73 million per year. This machine itself, the omelette machine, knocks out around 5,000 of them every day. But in every case, it is about the consistency of that product.
Skytrax, in giving Qatar its latest award, said the on-board product focuses on comfort, fine cuisine, the latest in-flight audio and video entertainment, award-winning service and a modern aircraft fleet averaging around 5 years of age. It means for the first time in a long time, Qantas, with its Emirates alliance, has genuine competition, again centred around a Middle Eastern airline. And a part of Qatar's growth strategy in Australia comes through its freight offering.
Normally in an aircraft such as this one, a Boeing 777, you'd expect to see seats and people. But these days, freight is just as important as shipping people is around the world. Qatar now is the biggest shipper of airline goods anywhere in the world. It shipped last year around 2.6 million tonnes of freight through its facilities in Doha. And it didn't matter whether it was pharmaceuticals or whether it was zoo animals or racehorses or fresh food. The fact of the matter is it remains the hub where it can then connect with cities all over the world without stopping.
Though the timing of the Iranian attacks this week were less than ideal for Qatar and for us, it again shows that in aviation, you constantly have to expect the unexpected. And that lesson, no doubt, is not lost on the new Virgin Australia management.